This is the Good Neighbor Podcast, the place where local businesses and neighbors come together. Here's your host, Jeff Gardner.
Welcome to the Good Neighbor Podcast. Today we have another good neighbor on, Sarah Fleming with Glowing Hearts Charity. Sarah, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me, Jeff.
Absolutely. We're very happy to have you on the show. We had a pretty good conversation before we started here. We have a relationship. We know you guys. We know what you do. We know what you stand for. Very happy to have you on your show and learn about the things that you're doing, the things that you've already done in the community, really helping out Simcoe County. So let's dive right in and tell the audience, especially think of the person who's never heard of you before or your business. What is it you do? What is your business?
So I am the managing director and board chair for Glowing Hearts Charity. We are a grassroots, completely volunteer-run charitable organization in Simcoe County, and we work to disrupt the cycle of poverty by empowering children and youth to realize their full potential by providing programs that support their mental health, growth, and development. So some of our programs include things like funding for psychoeducational assessments and follow-up support like tutoring. We provide mental health counseling, as well as group instrumental music programs. So we have ukulele, guitar, violin just got started this week for the first time, and we're gradually building in additional levels for those group lessons. We run the Simcoe Youth Choir that we started last January. We have a fresh produce program called Food That Fuels and a Backpacks for Youth program. And we have some more pilot ideas coming up.
So, wow. I mean, just a laundry list of things. So essentially, what is the age group?
School age children and youth. So all of our programs are targeting those who are living in low income households who are school age, so JK to the end of high school. But our music programs are completely open to everyone. So there's a low fee for those who can afford the fee, and otherwise they are completely free to the participants.
Beautiful. So you are, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but what I'm hearing is you are putting a great deal of effort to increase the quality of life and opportunity for our less privileged children in Simcoe County.
Yeah, absolutely. There's, when you live in a household that doesn't have the financial means compared to those who do, your access to opportunities is different. So whether it's the benefits that are associated with being involved in music programs, not just the, brain development and all of that, but also the mental health benefits, the community and connection is so important. And if you don't have the means to allow your kids to have your kids participate in those types of activities, they aren't getting those benefits. And meanwhile, those who are living in households who can continue to get more opportunities and access to more resources. And it opens up more doors and lots of opportunities for having a well-rounded life. Even things like our food program, being able to access good nutrition. It's not just for, growing and developing strong bones, things like that. It's also the mental health piece and how good healthy foods impact mental health. And, things like our psychoed assessments. As a classroom teacher and as a vision resource teacher in the public board, I see firsthand, and I've always seen firsthand, the benefit of having psychoeducational assessments for students, but also the need for them. And there aren't enough to go around. And they're not covered through OHIP. And I've had countless students in the past where there weren't any other opportunities to help fund the cost of an assessment. And again, it's one of those situations, families who can afford to get the cost, to cover the cost of an assessment. The average is about $3,000. Wow. If you have extended healthcare benefits, then those, benefits can go towards that, but often they're not even enough to cover it anyways. And so you have families who can support their child and get the assessment to help identify their learning needs and support the learner. And then those who are in low-income households are at a further disadvantage because they're not getting those needs identified early on. So all of the programs that we run are with a purpose and intent to really support the whole child, with the goal of, imagine down the road, these same kids who are accessing these specific, especially, tier 3 services, not needing to access social services by the time they're adults. That would be a dream come true. But even, there's so much that we can do and find different creative ways to help support more and more children.
I feel like you're a saint, Sarah.
No, I just get really passionate.
Yeah, and about a massively complicated global problem, and you're taking a chunk out of it. I think that's amazing. And the question that was running through my mind that whole time you were saying all that is, why did she get into this? How did she get into this? I mean, I think there's major challenges out there. Some are more, I guess, virtuous than others. And for people to say, I'm just going to tackle the food problem globally, or I'm going to tackle the energy problem globally. Most of us are like, no, I just want to get to work on time and not deal with traffic. So I want to know about your journey. Why did you get into this? How did you get into this? Why tackle such a big cause and give so much of your life to it?
It's funny, as a kid, I was always interested in the people who maybe not as many people cared as much about. I did a project about homelessness and things like that, and didn't do anything really with it growing up. And in my role as a teacher and as a vision resource teacher working in special education, have come to know so many amazing families and children, and seeing firsthand how there are gaps in services. And to me, there are so many things that I know can have such a great impact that still didn't do anything with it. But it's always, being back there somewhere in the back of my mind. I was convinced years ago to join a charitable organization at our cottage, the Magnetawan Watershed Land Trust, after much persuasion, and was on that board, and then also ended up being on a board for a now charitable organization that provides programming for music, dance, traditional and heritage arts and crafts, and is focused on building community and connection through those arts and traditional and heritage crafts. And then the pandemic hit. And I was trying to teach a student who is blind, a Braille user, online by day, and my evenings were available. And so I ended up getting involved with Berry Families Unite and was one of the administrators on the Facebook page. And it was then that I got connected with the Glowing Hearts Community Give and Get Center. It's a charity that started by the late Frank Nelson. He had a bucket list of ideas that he wanted to accomplish before he passed away. He was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And the Glowing Hearts Community Give and Get Center was a donation space. And I'd never heard of it until I was involved in the Facebook page. And they had asked me if I would join the board, to which I declined a few times because I was already too busy on 2 others and trying to teach. And when I went back we were back in person the fall of 2020 for a chunk of time anyways. I was done being with Berry Families Unite because it was going to be challenging going back as it was. And things kind of left with me with Glowing Hearts, but by October they were really looking for community members to get involved to keep the charity from folding and to continue on Frank's mission. And so a group of us in the community came together, and we knew we didn't want to have a donation space. I mean, there weren't even vaccinations at the time. We didn't know if we were going to be closing, opening, what did donations look like? And we knew we wanted to focus on children and youth. And so we took that next year to really focus on developing a strategic directions committee, all the boring stuff that happens behind the scenes, to help figure out what is Glowing Hearts going to be, and dotting our I's, crossing our T's to make sure that we were cleaning things up and making sure we then got our charitable objectives updated with the CRA so that we could then move forward with the planning that we had been doing behind the scenes. And initially, when I was the board chair, it looked different. We had actually at the time, we had someone who had a lot of experience as a director of the Kidney Close Foundation, Katrina, and she then got ill and wasn't able to continue on with us. And it was right at the beginning of our backpack season. So that very first year of 2021, we ran a backpack program because it's the only program that we could do, because the previous under the Give and Get Center, they had run that as an activity. And so it's something we did that year. And I guess I was kind of thrown into the role of running the program. And I guess actually, when I think back to that, that's really how I ended up more in this day-to-day managing director role, and why the board gave me that title. I'm not paid. It's all volunteer. I think I work more volunteer hours than I do for my paid job. But it's a labor of love. But it is actually because of that I ended up taking this path with Glowing Hearts and have had a much bigger leadership role than originally planned as the board chair. And so I'm the one who runs all the day-to-day stuff and the programs and things like that, and have a great team of wonderful humans that I've met through this that help make it all happen as well. But yeah, I guess that's how I got here. Haven't really all the way to there.
Yeah, it's a great story. It seemed like one volunteer opportunity to the next. It seemed like these ideas from your childhood took as long as they needed to take to marinate, but through that whole story, all the way back to when you were young, it seemed like caring for other people has been a steady theme.
Yeah.
So you shared the how. Why do you do it? Why do you put in more volunteer hours than paid hours? Why do you give so much?
Because it brings me joy.
Yes. I was so hoping you said that.
That is
it
like,
just feels good to help people.
It feels good to help people. It
Damn
truly does. And it almost breeds wanting to do more. I think the more you help, you then want to do more. And, people will say, oh, like, how do you have all this energy? How do you do that? I do get that a lot. And I totally understand not everyone has my level of energy, but it wasn't always like that anyways. But I find when you see firsthand the impact that you're having, and you're supporting people who are so appreciative and helping other, community organizations who are so appreciative, it just makes you want to do more. I always say I'm competitive, but I'm competitive with myself. I'm not competitive with other people. I'm very competitive with myself and want to do more and do better. As you come up with ideas that are different ways of tackling a challenge and really thinking and looking back at the not wanting to put a Band-Aid on a situation, although there is a need for all of those programs and services. But we have the benefit of being totally volunteer run. We we don't get government funding that, except for our summer students that hopefully we get again, because they're a huge benefit to us for the help out with our backpack program. But we have the opportunity to take our time to figure out where can we have great impact? We have a program that hasn't launched that we are at the very beginning stages of, that we are going to be involving people with lived experience to be a part of an advisory committee. But it is addressing the connection between mental health and clutter. And because the
Did
mental
you say
health
and clutter?
Yeah, because there is a significant connection there. And not only the how someone gets to a place, but then also the anxiety and mental health challenges that the clutter itself also causes, and the impact on learning and the home environment for the children. And so our program will be looking at addressing those needs using with mental health professionals, but also involving the whole household so that the kids are a part of the process and doing things in small chunks, but so that we are making it manageable, but dealing with the underlying how they got there, and then dealing with the how to also be able to let go of what can be let go, and then putting in place, involving again the family to be a part of the conversation of how can we best organize now what is left after all the decluttering has happened, because you can't organize stuff. That's a waste of time. Sure. And people have way too much stuff. And I know myself even how hard it can be, how overwhelming it can be dealing with clutter and stuff. And there's been an overwhelming response from the initial survey we had sent out to families that show and tell us that there is a need for this program. So this is something that we are now in the beginning processes of working towards. But again, we can do this in our own time and in a way that is manageable for us, but in a way that is, again, looking at how can we prevent later, so that those kids who are living in those households are getting what they need, so that and are learning the skills and learning how to declutter and learning how to organize and benefiting from an uncluttered space as well, so that they can then pass that on to their children later on, as you know.
Yeah, you're really trying to tackle the root of the problem.
Yeah.
Which I love that, because I think we've talked a bit about this before, helping businesses grow, which is what we do. It's been fitness and health, nutrition and all that. And so I was a personal trainer for a long time, or a fitness coach, a couple of different capacities that I did it. But the putting in a fitness regimen is one thing, and it's not too complicated of a thing. It's more about changing our mentality behind why we eat, how we eat, and what we eat. I can just write you a meal plan for the next 12 weeks. And some people will adhere to that, but it's when they stop doing that, they've reached their goals, they go back to their old habits, because they never understood in the first place why emotions bubble up and why they respond by eating very palatable foods, non-satiating foods that keep them eating more and more and more and more and more. So the Band-Aids, as you said, they absolutely have a purpose to help get somebody maybe through the next minute, hour, day, or week. But tackling that core problem, it's just so much more complicated. And I'm glad we need people to do it. So I'm really happy that you're out there doing that, especially on these type of issues. It's a hell of a journey and a hell of a why you do what you do. Please keep doing what you do.
I will. Don't you worry.
Tell us, the listeners, myself, the listeners, about some common myths or misconceptions about maybe your business specifically. I think nonprofit is too general, but maybe the industry that you're in, the field that you're in.
Oh my goodness. There are myths and misconceptions about charities for sure, in terms of the need for funded positions. We don't have a full-time paid full-time me at this point. Down the road, there is very likely, as we continue to expand, we will work towards that, but we also can do it in a way that is gradual as we're needing to. But there's a great movie called Uncharitable, and it's a documentary based on, and for the life of me, I can't remember his name. Anyways, look up Uncharitable and you'll find connections to a TED Talk that someone presented. And it's all about, comparing the charitable sector or nonprofit sector, which in Canada, they are different.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, so charities and nonprofits can't issue charitable tax receipts. There are way more restrictions with charities in terms of what you can and can't do and the processes for things. But this video or this documentary really speaks to changing mindsets about positions. People love that we are completely volunteer run. And I love sharing that because really it's more that I'm sharing, like, I love to give back more than anything. And I'm happy to do this. But when you compare and look at actual data of how people who are like those experts who are, CEOs who are running big, huge corporations and what they're able to do if they were like, these skilled people who are able to bring in millions of dollars but in the charitable sector, people, right away, they're like looking at top people and in charities and say, oh, they're paid too much or too much money is going to overhead and things like that. And I watched the documentary before the holidays and it's hard because I'm not a paid person. And I love that our overhead and our admin overall costs are crazy low compared to other organizations, because I'm also looking at, like, I love the challenge of looking for ways to reduce our costs. So we have a partnership with Simcoe Muskoka Family Connections, CAS, and they give us space to store our school supplies for $1 a year. This year, they didn't make us pay the $1. And so I love that challenge of keeping that low, but there is a need, if you want to see the great things that organizations can do when you have people, when you can fund people who can innovate and work together to come up with creative ways to solve problems, there is a need for that. And it's something that I'm still really toying with in my brain of how I'm on both sides. It's challenging. And I think the other myth or misconception, and sometimes it's even with other charitable organizations, is they might view other charities as competition. And that's something that they'll think, there's only so many donor dollars to go around. And from the get-go and always, I have never believed that. And truly believe that working together and collaborating is only going to increase the impact, of course, on the community, but can make even bigger things happen together. I think of Simcoe Muskoka Family Connections. Someone will reach out looking even to support, a child at Christmas. And if they're looking to sponsor a child, I will, and literally have connected that donor with someone from Simcoe Muskoka Family Connections, because I know that I want to give back because they've supported me and we have this relationship. I often will help out in that way. Together, we can achieve more.
I believe it. I believe there's enough to go around. Absolutely. I believe we haven't even come close, not even close to our limit. And I have this Post-it note that I always keep. It's the only one on my monitor. All my other main things that were Post-it notes are now on my skin, but this one hasn't gone on there yet. It says, goodwill compounds faster than revenue. When people get together and they collaborate and their stuff is actually important, it is actually good, and it can make a greater impact, then all of the abundance grows. So this limited donor dollars idea, I don't think that gets us. I think that just shuts doors rather than thinking, how do we make this better? How do we affect more people? Because if you're out there changing minds and increasing the quality of people's lives, they will have a greater impact on the community. And then they will be better parents and better business owners, and they will strive to shoot for their dreams rather than limiting themselves. And what kind of ripple effect does that have? So that's how I like to look at human beings. I do think we are limitless. And I think if we get creative and we get together and we fight for important things and focus on our immediate area of impact, like maybe it's just your home, maybe it's a city, maybe it's a region, maybe it's a country, depending on your influence. But if that's your focus, I don't think there's a limit to what we can do. So I'm really happy that that is your mindset, because you're kind of in a David versus Goliath situation right now. You know, I mean, small and local businesses and small charities, that's often what we're going up against is big, real people doing real things, right? Like we talked before the podcast, real settings. So
I'm
I
doing
love
this
that.
on my lunch, for the record.
Okay. Well, I don't want to keep you too much longer.
No,
So
it's okay.
let's get into a couple other things. So you are a wife, you are a mother, you run a charity, you are a teacher. I was going to say, is there any fun in there? I know a lot of that is fun for you, but when we think of fun, the traditional idea of fun, is there anything outside of work, being a wife and being a mother?
Yeah.
What do you do for fun, Sarah?
Well, I just started clogging in January, and I'm hooked.
Yes.
I love it.
Yes.
Someone in Oro on the 5th line, Julie McLeod, runs. I'm in a clogging camp right now, and then we'll go on to level 1. And I'm taking group violin lessons online with an instructor that I know through the organization I mentioned before. And so I get to have group fiddle lessons there, which is amazing. And we also host house concerts on occasion at our place, which is super fun. And I love gardening and wood carving. And I used to do a lot more different crafts and things like that, but that I find, even doing the social media posts and things like that helps with my need for creativity. I love, the graphic design side of things. I enjoy that part of Glowing Hearts as well.
It's beautiful. You seem, I mean, we've met a number of times before, and I've got the pleasure of picking your brain a few times now, but you seem like you give off this very jovial vibe. You seem happy. So there must be a fair bit of fun going on in your life, a fair bit of fulfillment. Outside of fun, I think this is one of my favorite questions. I think it really shares that often, especially on social media, especially these days, we tend to share only the best things that are going on in our life. And for the viewer of those things, right away, a lot of us will say, how is everything so amazing for them? Why is it so different than me? So I like to do my best in my life and in my work settings to share the whole human experience, our scars and our beauty. I think they're both just as valuable. So on that note, can you share with us any hardships, life challenges that maybe you had to face, that maybe you didn't want to? You look back, maybe you did want to, but you can certainly look back and say, this helped me become who I am today, a better person.
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. Well, growing up, for sure, I had undiagnosed anxiety and ADHD. And as an adult, first got the anxiety addressed and then ADHD, and really mostly because of my son and him recognizing a need to look at addressing those pieces. In his case, it was a much longer journey. But because of his journey, mine was a shorter one to figure out, in my case, what meds helped and make it a lot easier for me to deal with all things except for phone calls, because I really hate phone calls. Still can't help it. I don't know why. I would rather Zoom any day. But yeah, it's funny. I remember like every speech, I would cry before and after. Like it was torture. And I went into teaching. I knew I wanted to teach from a very young age. And oh my goodness, even in teachers college, like as soon as I was being assessed or something like that, I was a nervous wreck. And I, not to toot my own horn, but I was a great teacher, but speaking in front of adults was also as soon as there were adults around, a whole other can of worms. And medication definitely helped me deal with it. And then with Glowing Hearts, when Katrina was no longer involved, and sometimes I'd give speaking opportunities to other board members, a little avoidance on my part, and then I started. There was, I think, one in particular time there was no one, I had to do it, and was nervous as all get out, but gradually now I'm much more comfortable than I ever could have imagined I would have been. And definitely for me, medication really made it a lot easier to deal with those things. Like I think back to when I was a kid, and I was in a music program also for a while, and an arts program in York Region, and same thing. I'd cry before and after every solo. Like it was torture. And I was just a ball of anxiety. I would miss out on activities because I'd be too anxious to go even. And yeah, it's funny, you look back, I'm just remembering these things now. But we're always, really open at home about those things. And I'll even with my son going through things and figuring out, like, he's in an unbelievable place. And I guess I am too. And I feel like all of that, and that's, I don't even really think of those looking back. It's not what comes to mind at first as being hardships or challenges. There have been other things, family related events and things like that have changed and transformed our lives. But I know that how I deal with hardships is very different than how others do. And but I recognize that not everyone processes things the same way.
Mm-hmm.
So something that could happen to me is going to be completely different, have a different impact on someone else. And I recognize that. And so I know that even in dealing with the families that I'm supporting, or the students I'm working with, or their families, anyone, it helps me, I think, be really empathetic and compassionate, and just giving people a chance, like not being judgmental about something because you just don't know what they're dealing with on a given day. And it's okay. Like, people just need the opportunity to feel like they can be heard and that someone cares when others haven't. And, that all has, I guess, helped me be a better human. I want more people to be better humans.
I love it. I appreciate so much you sharing that with us. I know these things are difficult to share, but you went from not wanting to speak in public speaking gigs, and now, I mean, your voice is used for positive change. That is quite a journey.
It is. Who knew?
Right?
I had no idea. Let me tell you.
It's amazing what a human being can accomplish when they just face that nagging, this is uncomfortable, right? We don't want to be uncomfortable, but often on the other side of that fence is this fulfillment that we didn't know was there. I use it as, I have fear as a green light. One of my rules, things that I don't want to do, I feel like that's a symptom that, like, on the dash of your car, those red lights letting you know things are going on, that fear symptom, that emotion, that anxiety, sweaty hands, whatever it is. I look at it now as my body's telling me you're about to do something important, so don't avoid it. So I really appreciate.
That's when you grow, right? Like
that's it.
We teach, it's even in some of the, the first 20 days of math in terms of mindset and like doing things that are challenging, because that's when you grow. It's the same for anything. You have to be willing to just do those hard things. I easily, could have given up, even, back when Katrina we knew she was ill and wasn't going to be able to stay on. And we had, we were just on the cusp and figuring out, like, do we even continue? We don't have someone who can lead and deal with the day-to-day happenings. And but yeah, people can do hard things. It's just that little like starting point and seeing that, because the rewards are huge.
Yeah, right there. That's the soundbite. People can do hard things. I love it. I love it so much. What's one thing you wish listeners knew about Glowing Hearts specifically, especially for the people that, well, both for the people who have heard Glowing Hearts' name, as you guys have been getting out there. Hopefully this helps a little bit too, for that have heard the name, and maybe for the people who have not heard the name yet in Simcoe County.
Oh my goodness. What do I want?
I'm sure there's many things, but
yeah, where do I start?
One big one.
Go to our website and check out our programs to see what we offer. Our music programs are available to everyone. Some programs, like our Psychoed assessment program, we do ask for notice of attacks of assessments, but others we don't. We really try to have programs that are impactful and do things in a different way. So, even things like our backpack program, we find out favorite and least favorite colors and put in what is needed and not what isn't. So kids are getting a backpack in their favorite color, because that's what matters, right? That's the part. Going to school with something that you identify with really has a much bigger impact than here's your charity backpack, which we are not. And I guess the other part is, everything we do is because of community support. Yes, we apply for some grants and we'll gradually be applying for more, but it all takes money. And, whether it's through, if people work through a company that has an employee giving program, and I'd love to connect to share more about Glowing Hearts, or maybe they could share this podcast with business owners so that they can learn more about what we do, because there is a huge impact. Since that very first summer of 2021, when we ran our first backpack program, since then, I haven't done the numbers recently, but it's well over 3,200 different children, not repeats, different children have been impacted by one or more of our programs in a very short time. So it's pretty exciting.
So over 3,200 kids have been impacted. You're giving backpacks. You're teaching how to live a better life. You're providing resources. You're giving them fun things like art and teaching them major character traits. Every person in the family can get involved, from early age to adults. Donations are welcome.
Always.
And it's a constant giving back to the community.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You do great things. The people at Glowing Hearts, we were very happy to have you on the show today. You guys do fantastic things. How can our listeners find out about you? If they want to get involved, how do they find out about you?
Yeah, so we have a website, glowingheartscharity.org. We are also on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. So follow us on social media. And if people are wanting to find out about program announcements when initiatives launch, that type of thing, they can subscribe in the footer of our website.
Beautiful. Sarah, I knew I would enjoy this conversation. I'm looking forward to have many more. I really appreciate you coming on the show today, and I really appreciate doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much, Jeff. It's been a pleasure. I was a little nervous before, but you make me feel at ease talking. So thanks.
And I get the same from you. It's just easy to speak to you. It's really been a pleasure, Sarah. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Good Neighbor Podcast Midhurst. To nominate your favorite local businesses to be featured on the show, go to gnpmidhurst.com. That's gnpmidhurst.com, or call 705-413-3775.